Welcome back to my YouTube channel. On this lab, I'm going to take you through the very first lab on basic network service and application configuration. We're going to be looking at how to configure FTP in this lab. Now, FTP can be configured using multiple management modes. One of them is FTP. The other one is TFTP, Trivial File Transfer Protocol. And the last one is SFTP, Secure File Transfer Protocol. Main difference between FTP and TFTP is the fact that FTP uses TCP while TFTP uses UDP. On the other hand, main difference between FTP and SFTP is that SFTP encrypts data as it's being sent over the network. Now, FTP works on a client-server mode. The device that works as the server is the one that you can be able to access from a client in order to manage files. Managing files might include things like creating files, downloading files, uploading files, deleting files, etc. Then the device that works as the client is the one that can perform these operations on the server. Now, by the end of this particular video, you should be able to understand how an FTP connection is established, how FTP server parameters are configured, and also how to transfer files to an FTP server from a client. Now, in this particular topology, R1 is the FTP client, while R2 will act as the FTP server. And we're going to configure an IP address as you can see there. Now, on step number 1, we're supposed to configure the device names and the IP address, which I have already done. After doing that, we're supposed to save the configuration file for subsequent verification. So we're going to use the save command, then create a file called test1.cfg on R1, and then again create a file on R2, the current configuration file, and save it on a file called test2.cfg. Okay, so let's do exactly that. Maybe we can begin by confirming that indeed we have configured the IP address. Can even do a ping to test. Let's do with the -C option to specify just 2 pings, 10.0.1, the 2, like that. So it's gonna go through. You can always also configure, if you configured, by using the display IP int brief command to just see the IP address and the status. You can also use, by the way, you can also use display IP interface G003 to give the details of a specific interface. So for example, here we can see that the internet address has been configured to that. And the last way, by the way, is you can go to the interface. You can go to the interface int G003, then you use the display this command, display this, to see the configurations on that particular interface. Okay, so now we're supposed to save the current configuration on R1 to a file called test1.cfg. Let me do a deliberate mistake here. So the command is save to save the current configuration. So save test1.cfg. So you see, we get error unrecognized command save. So the save command, as a reminder, is supposed to be used on user view. So user view, you have to use it on user view. Okay, before we create this file, maybe we can do dir to display the content of the flash directory, so that we confirm that indeed we do not have the test1 file. So you can see that we're having some directories and only one file, private-data.txt. The others are directories, as you can tell by the attribute D on each one of them there. Okay, so let's do that. Save test1.cfg, like that. Do you want to save it? Yes. Okay, then you can do dir to confirm that it has been created. Good. So we have it. We have it here. Okay, so let's go ahead and create another file on R2. So we can do dir. So we don't have test2. Then we can use the save command, test2.cfg, like that. Do you want to save it? Yes, dir, and indeed we can see it. So the save command, as I said, is used to save the current configuration. So for example, we can use the more command to display the contents of test2.cfg so that we can just see what is in there. So more command is used to display the contents of a file. So we can see that whatever is in this file are these particular commands. So you can indeed see that this is one of the things that you can verify that indeed we've saved the current configuration of this particular router R2, because indeed we've configured it with 10.12.2 on interface G003. So you can use the more command to display the contents of a file. Okay, so now we go to step number 2. On step number 2, we want to configure the FTP server. The FTP server is R2 on our case. To do that, we need to use the FTP server enable command, this one here. By default, this function is disabled. So we need to do that. Now, when you're configuring the FTP server, you can also optionally configure other parameters like the port numbers that you want to use for FTP, the source IP address for the FTP server, maximum idle time, etc., etc. So if we come here to R2 and we do FTP question mark, FTP, okay, we need to be on system view. So let me clear this. So system FTP question mark. So you see, you can configure the FTP server. So FTP and then server. But you can also configure the timeouts. If someone has logged in using FTP to this server and they have stayed idle for some time, they're automatically logged out. You can also configure the server source IP address, for example. So here, we're just going to use FTP server enable. Let's do question mark. You can either do enable or port number in order to set the port number. So we just want to enable like that. Okay, so now we have R2 acting as an FTP server. Okay, so let's now go to step number 3. On step number 3, we want to configure local FTP user, a user who's going to use FTP on this particular router. So here, the most important thing, really, we're just creating using AAA, the usual way we do it. The only thing we have to do is to enable the service type of FTP and to also ensure that the user level is at least above 3. The other thing we have to do, which is compulsory for FTP to work, is to specify the FTP directory. The FTP directory. So the FTP directory is the directory to which this particular person will land in when they FTP from a particular client. So in which folder or directory are they going to land in? So that's why you have to configure the FTP directory for it to be able, for FTP to be able to work. So this is compulsory. So please note that this directory must be specified, otherwise the FTP user cannot log into the system. It doesn't have to be Flash, it can be any other directory, by the way. Okay, so let's do exactly that. We create the user. The user is called FTP client. So we go to AAA. Remember, we're doing this on R2. Then local user. We want to create a user called FTP client, like that. Then password cipher WoW at 123. After that, we do local user FTP client, service type FTP, like that. Then we configure the user label, so local user FTP client. Okay. Allow me to disable the output, so enable terminal monitor is the command to do that. Okay, so we can go back to AAA, then local user FTP client. Then at this point, we've already enabled the service type. What did we want to do next? I'm forgetting. After the service type, there's the FTP directory, but before the FTP directory, let me just confirm the label, the user label. Okay, so privilege label 3. Okay, so after that we can now configure for this particular user what we call the FTP directory. If we do question mark, you can see that we can use flush question mark. We are supposed to put a / so that they're landed into the flash directory. So just like that. So that is it about step number 3. Now we go to step number 4. Step number 4, we want to log in from the client to the server. So we go to the client, which is R1, and we use the command FTP, and we specify the IP address of the FTP server. Okay. So we come here on R1, and then we do FTP. We're actually supposed to be on user view, so FTP 10.0.12.2. so the user is FTP client. That's the username. The password is Huawei. The password is Huawei at 123. Okay, so you can see now I have FTP'd into R2, so logged in. So if I do dir to list the current directory, we are going to see that indeed we have test2. Remember, we created test2 in R2. So right now we are in R2. We've FTP'd into R2. Okay, so let's now go to step number 5. In step number 5, we want to perform some operations. In particular, we want to configure the transmission mode. We know that the transmission mode can either be ASCII or it can be binary. ASCII for transferring text files, while binary mode for application files, system software files, images, video files, and compressed files together with databases. Now, by default, the transfer mode is ASCII, but we're just going to type ASCII just for the sake of demonstration. So after using ASCII, we can now, after specifying ASCII, we can now download test2 by using the get command. Okay, so while we are here at R1, we can do question mark to see the possible commands. So you can see some of the possible commands for FTP client include ASCII to set the file transfer mode to ASCII, binary to set the file transfer to support binary image. Otherwise, you can use by to terminate the FTP connection of the remote server. So we're also going to do that in order to exit from FTP. CD is used to change the working directory. The other one we're going to use here is delete for deleting a file on the remote machine. We've already used dir to list the contents of a remote directory. You can also use ls to list the contents of the current or remote directory. We are also going to use get and put. So put to upload a local file to the remote host, and get to download the remote file to the local host. Okay, so let's do something. So we want to use the get command. As you can see here, get, then the name of the file. So we want to download this file from R2, so that it comes into R1. Okay, so before we do that, we specify the ASCII mode. So ASCII, just like that. Then get test2.cfg, like that. Okay, so transfer complete. As you can see, it also says the size of that particular file. Okay, so the next thing we are supposed to do is to delete the configuration file. So we want to delete test2 on R2 using the delete command. So to do that, we type delete, then the name of the file, because we've already downloaded it here. So CFG. So do you really want to do that? Yes. Then we can do dir. Do we have test2? No, we don't. We don't have test2 here. We don't have it. Okay. So that's how to delete. Use the delete command. The next thing we're supposed to do is to upload the test1 configuration file to R2. So the command is put, then the name of the file. So let's do that. So put test. So we want to upload this configuration file from R1 to R2. So the command is put test1.cfg, like that. So we can see that it's using ASCII and the transfer is complete. If we do dir, we can see that we have test1, and we can actually come to R2 and also do dir. So quit. Let me clear this. dir. Oh, dir. So you can see that we don't have test2 anymore, but we have test1.cfg because we deleted test2 and we uploaded it here. In order to exit from FTP, if you're on R1, you want to exit from the client, you can use buy or you can use quit. So if you type buy like that, then the FTP connection is going to be closed down. So if we do dir here, we should be able to see test2 and also test1 because we downloaded test2. And even though we uploaded test1 to R2, we didn't delete it from R1, so a copy is also left here. So ladies and gentlemen, that is how easy it is to configure FTP. I hope you've enjoyed and I hope you've also learned. Thank you very much. Thank you for your continued support. Remember to like my video, subscribe, and also share it with your friends and colleagues. Asanteni sana. God bless you.